and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators. I'm Gina, and today we're going to be talking about one of my personal favorites, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. Now, the main character in this story is a teenage boy named Jacob Portman who lives in Florida with his affluent family and has a rather, in his view, ordinary life. He's working at a chain shop owned by some relatives, but he doesn't want to work there. He wants a little more out of his life. One day, however, his grandfather is killed. Now, Jacob's grandfather had told him stories about the peculiar children, the house that he sheltered during World War II, and about Miss Peregrine, who serves as a mother figure to him and to the other peculiar children. Jacob, as a child, believes these stories, but naturally, as he gets older, he comes to think of them as fiction and realizes that his grandfather is making all of this up. One day, however, Jacob's grandfather is killed in the woods, and Jacob believes that he saw a hologast, which is a monster that his grandfather had told him about among the stories of the peculiar children. And there's a sketching of one in here. There are pictures in this book. And when he says this, nobody believes him. They think that his grief for his grandfather is causing him to lose his mind. So Jacob's parents take him. Here's the sketch. This is the hologast. It looks like a man with tentacles coming out of its mouth. This is the evil creature that Jacob saw. His parents believe that Jacob's grief for his grandfather is causing him to lose his mind, so they take him to see a psychiatrist who convinces Jacob that the monster was nothing more than a figment of his imagination. It was a manifestation of his thoughts regarding his grandfather because he'd seen his grandfather die. His mind had convinced him that he saw this monster that his grandfather had told him about. Makes perfect sense. And then the psychiatrist recommends Jacob and his father to go to Cairnholm, Wales, which is where the house was located, so that Jacob can see the house and realize that there's nothing spectacular about it. And it's also supposedly an excellent bird-watching destination, which is what convinces Jacob's father to come along, because he's a person who likes to watch birds. They go over to Cairnholm. They stay in a room that is connected to a bar and is a rather run-down place. Jacob goes off, tries to find the house. He successfully finds the house, but he realizes it too is a run-down place. Looks like something awful had happened there, with the walls crumbled in and everything all over the place. Looks like something exploded there, but naturally he is still inclined to explore it, and that's just what he does. He believes that Miss Peregrine and the others are dead when he asks around about the house, and he finds out that there had been a bomb that blew up the house and that the people who were in there had all died. Jacob is saddened to hear this because he was hoping to find Miss Peregrine and talk to her about his grandfather, but then he presumes that she is dead. One day, when he is in the room with his father, he sees a bird, a peregrine falcon, come and visit him. And then Jacob continues to explore the house, but then he finds himself back in time during World War II, and he meets Emma, one of the peculiars, a girl who is able to shoot fire out of her hands. And Emma at first accuses Jacob of being a white, and I'll talk about those later, but eventually comes to accept Jacob as his grandfather's, well, grandson. But she had been romantically involved with his grandfather and is distraught when she finds out that he's dead, but eventually develops feelings for Jacob. Now, Jacob meets Miss Peregrine and realizes that the peculiars are real, although he does kind of suspect that he's hallucinating at first. He meets everybody from the pictures that his grandfather had shown him, including the boy who has bees in his mouth, the person who has an extra mouth on the back of their head, the girl who can levitate, Bronwyn, who is super strong. However, her brother Victor, who also has super strength, is dead, and his body is lying in one of the rooms in the house. When Jacob finds the house back in the time where he travels, everything is pristine and perfect. Absolutely nothing like the wreck of a house that he had discovered before. Which is why I think Jacob is absolutely surprised to find himself in part back in time. I'd be surprised too. One of the reasons why I love this story so much, though, being autistic, I can relate to the characters because there were many times in my life where I felt like I didn't fit in. I felt, well, peculiar. And the peculiar children in this book, they live in loops, which is run by a woman who can shapeshift into a bird and can also manipulate time so that the same day repeats itself over and over again, although it's not quite like the other day always. Sort of like Groundhog Day, but more fun. And, you know, enjoyable enough that you actually don't want to die. Jacob is not sure whether he wants to stay with the peculiars or go back home with his father until whites threaten the peculiars. Whites are hollow ghasts who have preyed on enough that they take a different form, which is a person that just has white eyes, but they are able to disguise themselves as ordinary everyday people. And surprise, Jacob finds out that his psychiatrist had been a white, which I think is pretty amazing because in real life, the proverbial monster, you don't always know who they are. Somebody can be really, really evil, but you don't know it right away. Monsters in real life can disguise themselves as everyday people. I really enjoyed the way Ransom Riggs presented this story because the way it starts out as nothing more than a kid with an ordinary life, but then it gradually progresses into this fairy tale about these people who are in hiding, and they all have their own spectacular powers, such as bees or the ability to give life, like Enoch. Enoch is able to create little live figures, and he can also at least temporarily bring dead things back to life using organs. That's not creepy, I don't know what is, but that doesn't make it any more awesome. And I loved the way it progresses into the crazy fairy tale that it eventually becomes. Jacob eventually decides that he wants to stay with these people after the loop is destroyed, and he realizes that he has to help the peculiars. However, he also comes to realize that he himself is a peculiar, although his powers are not obvious at first. He is able to see the hologhasts, which are invisible to most people, which is the same power that his grandfather had. And he realizes that this power will come in handy. So he decides to stay with the peculiars. Now, there are sequels to this book. I have read them, and they are also really good. I would highly recommend this book and its sequels. And I would give this 5 stars out of 5. It is a great story for anybody who has ever felt different, or anybody who has ever felt bored with their life and wanted something a little more unusual. And as I said before, the way it progresses from the beginning to what seems like an average teenage boy story to an almost Harry Potter-esque, but not quite fantasy. Another thing that's great about this book is the pictures. Now, there are newer editions of this book that don't really have the pictures in them, because there's a movie based off of this book. It's by Tim Burton, the movie. And there are newer editions that just have like the movie as the title page, that no longer have the pictures in it, but I feel like the pictures were part of what made the story. And here are just some examples of the pictures. For instance, here is the girl who levitates. And here is Victor. And here's that person who had the extra mouth. I can't imagine what the story is like without the pictures. So, thank you for watching this video. Pick this up at your local library or wherever you can find it sometime soon, because this is an amazing story and I love it. And as we always say at Literary Gladiators, keep reading.